Standard deviation.
Hello, we're back.
Yes, yes,
Another scintillating episode of Standard Deviation Podcast is here.
yeah. And this episode, we're really gonna ruin all our promises to our audiences, to our listeners, but it's for good reasons because we have a great guest. So today we're gonna talk about G4 again,
We're gonna have
Simo.
to go there again. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
fine. It doesn't always have to be in a negative light, even though that's kind of the go-to.
Oh, so,
go-to. Like
so
we are biased because we've been using these tools for so long. So we are biased to look
yeah,
for inconsistencies and faults.
and look for shit. And if you look for shit, you find
Yeah,
it.
you typically tend to find it. So we can definitely talk about that, but it doesn't have to be the full focus. So what's going on? What's happening? How's your anything progressing on your Scandinavian move front?
Yes, so I sent my working contract today to the landlord to apply to the owners association.
Mm,
It's kind of a whole thing in Sweden with the or
yeah.
because you don't own it, but you own it, but you don't own it. The building, so the building association is to approve it. And I found such a nice apartment, Simo. It's next to the ocean,
Okay.
and it has a park. So like this is where the building is, and this is the ocean, like
Yeah.
right there.
Very nice.
So I already I'm planning to get into fitness besides
Beach
fit.
body.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Not just fit this pie in my mouth, but actually fitness.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I'm going. I told you when we recorded last time that I'm gonna be. Stop making me laugh.
I didn't do anything. I literally did nothing.
I'm gonna be in Malmo next week. I'm also big shouts to Yomar. He invited me to speak at this e-commerce meetup on
Oh,
Wednesday
nice.
when we're gonna talk about
In Copenhagen or
in
Malmo?
Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about a bit about CRO strategy in e-commerce.
Yeah.
That's always fun. But yeah, I'm just stressing, excited though. I was talking to the people from Measure Camp Helsinki, which kind of adopted me as an honorary Nordics person. So Lena was very excited because she said, "Oh, so you're close, so now you can come. You're not gonna miss Helsinki anymore." And I was like, "Absolutely not. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
there again." Helsinki is still my favorite city. I know you're gonna
Yeah.
disagree with me, but I love Helsinki. Helsinki is
Yeah.
the best. But that's it. What about you? What are you up to?
Oh well, I mean, we've also had like I mentioned, we had a really busy summer with moving house and everything, and now we
Yeah, yeah.
finally got the old place sold, and so it's
That
just
was
been
fast.
well, it wasn't really because we started sell well, I don't know, it depends on what you compare it to. Like the housing market is really bad at this moment, of course, because the interest rates are so high,
Yeah, yeah.
but we got really lucky and a really nice family bought our old place, and we actually just had lunch with them today, and so
Aw.
we were really lucky. But I mean, there are houses that are on the market for 2-3 years even, especially the older ones that are kind of difficult to get rid of. But yeah, but that's been like just all consuming. Not stress is the wrong word because it's kind of out of our hands. Like
Yeah.
the real estate agents are who do the real work, but it's mostly just about like a nagging feeling in the back of your head that something's incomplete and you want like closure. So now we maybe finally have it. So yeah, but it's yeah, you can't really get anything done when there are
I
so many
know.
things going on, and with our son starting school and everything. So it's just been so
That's so exciting though.
it is exciting. It's also kind of like it's difficult to in a way to let him go
I
because
know.
you're giving up on a very huge part where I mean he was in preschool, of course, so it's not like he hasn't been away from home, but it's still like a huge thing. He's now
It's
making his
different.
own friends and making his own way around the world. So it's definitely like a emotional time for us, but he's doing fine, and he's such a smart guy. We might have to hire him like soon because he's so clever. So I think he would
Get them early in the work field.
get them early and for sure and just abuse child labor. That's what it really is.
Oh, that's so funny because I also told my son that he should edit our podcast
Oh
because
yeah,
it's
that's
I'm
good.
lazy.
Maybe we could do. No, that would be exploited. I was thinking do like a kids only episode where your son does the producing and Benjamin can then do like
That would be fun.
graphics and Julia can just jump around and
Yeah,
goof.
and Eric can come and mean mug everybody.
Yeah,
She's
for
always like,
sure.
"This is how he looks." He's like very
Yeah, that
conspicuous.
would be good. That would like deadpan.
Yeah, just like just suspicious. Like everything is suspicious.
I have a feeling that the quality would be like miles better than anything that we could come
Oh
up with.
my god! Yeah, look
Yeah,
at us right now. Like this is the
yeah. It's just not.
it's
It's
terrible.
not going well. It's not going. This is this second season slump of our cooperation.
But it's not bad. Like people
It's
love
not
it.
bad.
Do you
No,
see
of
how
course
many
it's. I'm just
people like
kidding.
our podcast? It's
I don't
shocking
know
to me.
what's up with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the bar is very low.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
no,
yeah, we're
that's
stalling. So
of
to
course.
I'm procrastinating and everything else. But yeah, on a professional level, like it's been a lot of fun. So we're at Simo,
Yeah.
we're working on the new BigQuery course. So that's been
Yeah.
actually really interesting because we have and this kind of reworking training is one of the things I want to talk with our guest about
Okay.
because her agency also has a training program. But it's one of the and we had this. I think we talked about this when we read the server side course, but how to kind of redo content um, so that it of course has to be at least as good as the previous version. Uh,
Yeah, if not better.
yeah, you don't just want to do like an update of audio and video. You want to add something new there because
Yeah.
obviously we released the course in 2021 originally, so there's been a lot of learning on the way.
Oh
And
my god, 2021.
was it 2021? I think it was 2021 because
That's
we or
crazy.
maybe 2020, late
I
20.
think you
No,
redid
it had to
some
no, it had to be
version of it.
2021. No,
I
no,
think
because we no, wait. We founded
wait,
the company in late 2020, so it couldn't. So we released server side in 2021. Now I'm trying to remember if we also released BigQuery on the same year.
I'm
I'm
checking
drawing a
right
blank
now.
here. I'm drawing a blank now.
Hold up,
Um,
because
but whatever, it's been
yeah,
years,
sorry, yeah,
and
even I got excited right now. When did you do it?
yeah, and Johan has of course been doing GA for and BigQuery full time, so
Yeah.
that's his focus, and of course other stuff as well. So he's branched into data engineering quite a bit. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm kind of just an observer. Like he's producing the material and sending it to me, and I'm editing it. And I'm like I'm really liking what I'm seeing. So I think it's going to be a lot of
Johan
fun. But
is
it's
great.
he is great. It is still kind of a difficult job, especially now that we're splitting the course into multiple smaller ones. It's kind of difficult to figure out the pacing and the tempo and everything. But things
Got it,
tend
yeah.
yeah, but things tend to kind of fall into place eventually.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And maybe one day I will do a course too, because like I look, all of you guys are doing courses and stuff. It's just that I don't know how you have so much patience because it takes so much. Like people underestimate how much a course takes. Like
Well, what do you mean? Like patience for what?
to build a curriculum, to film it, to edit it, to make sure it's up to standard, that it
But it's
tells a
just
story.
but it's just project work. Like it's like any other project. If you do a digital marketing project for a large brand, it's going to be at least the same amount of time and effort. Like it's just work. If you
Yeah, I
do it
know.
like if you do it full time, it's just work. If you do it as a side project, as we did our first course, then it's definitely like then it requires prioritization.
I know when I was at CXO, when I was doing it for other people, it was fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is good. Let's release this. But like to actually start it and do it myself, I had this idea at some point to do kind of like this A/B testing for apps type of
Mm.
course. I started writing the curriculum. I got so annoyed by the middle, like the first chapter, like what is, apps, what is the app ecosystem, how do you A/B test? I was like, man, fuck it, I'm not doing this. Is not worth it. So like, I think you do have to have some sort of trait as a person to be able to go through something like this. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't focus on it. Or for my own. For other people, I would do it. Man, let's do it. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe I'm just lazy.
no, I don't. No, I don't think it's that. I think it's just that you know what you're good at, and maybe designing a curriculum isn't one of those things, and it's fine because designing a curriculum is actually super difficult. It's one of the
Yeah.
most, wha- it's one of the most difficult things to get right in a course because there's no like that defines everything you do, and you can't really walk it back once you've done all the videos. So
And
it's
there's not
definitely
much on apps. Like there's nothing I can compare it with.
yeah.
And I'm actually I was invited to speak at this event next month in Ireland. It's the EMEA App Summit for Google,
Mm,
and it's like this very exclusive event for app developers. still wondering why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing here? But I'm excited to be a part of it. So I'm planning to kind of like talk to more people to kind of see like where do they learn,
Mm,
about apps. And I took a course, App Store optimization course,
mm,
from the Play Store. And actually, I do like the courses. Like, maybe a lot of people don't know about this, but the Google Academy has a lot of certification for developers, for Firebase, for TensorFlow, for whatever you want to do. Like,
mm.
it's not just the classic, GA4 Google Ads courses, but like the developer. If you create a developer account, a profile, you have access to an academy of Firebase, of TensorFlow,
Yeah,
machine learning, and like there's so much content there, and it's really, really good. I wonder why
yeah,
they're not using it for their other stuff, but
yeah.
I shouldn't have said that. But
But it's a good question. Like, why are apps so kind of overlooked? But I think it's just mostly because they require so much specialized knowledge. It's not like and they have such strict. The frameworks are strict. The programming paradigms are strict, and then the App Store guidelines are strict. So it's just like you can't just jump in and start doodling. You actually
you
have to
can't.
have a very strong understanding of the discipline. So I think that for
Yeah,
the typical digital marketer who could easily jump into GTM and just start copy pasting JavaScript code without any problem, they do have a huge barrier to cross when it comes to apps. And then
and
just the whole life cycle notion, which is missing from the web. Like with apps, you have to think about life cycle, and you don't really have an analogy with websites. It's I think it's just difficult to understand. For example, with an A/B test, like where do you initialize it? Where do you run the experiment? Where do you collect
exactly,
the data? And I think that there's also a risk involved to trying to build a course around that because you would have to be kind of generic because there are so many different frameworks,
and
or you do
different
like a super laser focused one over on a very specific stack, like Firebase plus
Kotlin or
Ionic or
something.
whatever.
Yeah,
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 so it's not an easy place to be in. And then there's the always and then there's always the risk of just screaming into the void that nobody's going to watch it because nobody cares about apps
that's
like
what I'm
app.
thinking. And it's a $6 billion industry, and
Yeah.
it's super frustrating. Like, I do this is what I mostly do at work. And right now we're actually in the process. I was talking to a colleague today, because if you use Firebase remote config to do
Mm,
A/B testing, obviously I cannot do that, or her. That's developer work. That's app code base. You cannot touch it. Like, everything, it does show you an iframe of where you can put some settings, but it doesn't matter because the actual
mm,
test needs to be implemented in the app. So I was talking to her like, okay, this data is exported in BigQuery, but how do we map it to
mm,
user ID? How do we know exactly where the test is running? How do we create the audiences and segments? So I remember I was talking to Johan a while back. To your point, I was like, if you're doing the course with Simo, where's the part about Firebase export? Like, can we do something about that? Because yeah, so it's a puzzle that I'm still trying to figure out. So that's why I didn't continue with the writing the curriculum, because like it's so many variables to it. Like, you can
mm.
have so many ways of building the app, and it's kind of like disheartening that people don't care that much about apps. But maybe it's maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not connected to the right people. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I think it's mostly just that for marketing is marketing, like the digital marketing that we know about, the one that is very browser focused. For those
Yeah,
people, apps are very alien. But of course, like there's an enormous amount of app developers out there who definitely do like growth hacking with apps is
yeah,
just a very very big thing, and people do it all the time, or whatever you want to call it, just trying to explode the user base. But that's really so it is an interesting question, one that maybe we should explore in another episode
yeah, yeah. I'm
with a
sorry.
relevant
I'm
guest. No,
just
no, no.
like
I just
thinking.
mean
I'm
that this
thinking.
could definitely be this could definitely be expanded. But it's yeah.
Yeah,
I
like,
used to
where's the
yeah.
export? Where's the Firebase export in BigQuery? Can you and Johan answer that question? How do we use it?
Well, I mean,
I
it's just
I know
different
it's
values for
there,
different columns. Yeah.
but how do you map it? How do you map stuff together? How do you make the differentiation between the Firebase export and the J4 export? Because the Firebase export will have engineering metrics, right? Like crashes and performance and other stuff, or rage clicks and other shit. How do you separate it? Yeah. Anyway, for another episode about Firebase, we need to find somebody that's a Firebase expert to get them, so I can.
Holla at us. if you recognize yourself, if you identify as a Firebase expert.
Exactly. Holla at your girl and
Yeah,
boy.
yeah,
Yeah. But anyway, so today we have Dana DiTomaso over. Really excited to talk to her. She does SEO, she does analytics, she does everything in digital
yeah,
marketing, and she's an amazing instructor. So I know we're gonna talk a bit today about her playbooks and frameworks and how she
yeah.
does courses, and
Yeah, it's gonna
obviously,
be yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's interesting, always interesting to talk to somebody who's kind of a hybrid because, um, we talked with Mike King recently, and I think that SEO is well, Mike was a lovely lovely example of a person who's so deeply entrenched in the research that
yeah,
they approach SEO as a research. But I think there's a lot of people doing SEO who are not that into like digging into the data and digging into they just go by the best practice and the heuristics as we talked about with else.
yeah,
But I think Dana is in a very interesting person because she's so skilled in the SEO world and then also in the hard world of like analytics data and web analytics and behavioral analytics. So it's going to be interesting to see how to marry those because I used to like way back when I used to do some really terrible SEO work and I always had a problem with proving results because you're looking at kind of derivative information. If you're not using Search Console or webmaster tools as it was back then, you're kind of using like secondhand information from tools that try to observe the data sets, um, like
rank math. I
yeah, something
use
like
rank
that.
math.
And but they're doing correlation, and it's
Yeah,
just so difficult, or it's actually so easy to manipulate that information into looking really good in the reports because it's not really grounded anywhere. So it's going to be interesting to talk to Dana about how she manages this dichotomy, or maybe it's just something in my head that there really is no conflict here, and there's a lot of things that you can do with GA4, for example, when it comes to SEO. But I don't
yeah.
know.
I have like interesting questions for GA4 and SEO, so I need to ask her. But also, if you have any tangential with the Google Search Console, why are we not putting cities and states in the reports? Like, it's not that hard. Why are you guys just giving me the country? That's only like this is my beef with Search Console. Just put the city. It would make our life so much easier.
Mm.
Imagine you're working with US and there's so many states and you want to see the search intent in different states and you can't because it's
Yeah.
gonna be everything
Well, I wish they'd
USA.
take the country away as well because it's so inaccurate.
It's like who cares?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just reverse geolocation,
I
which is
got
so
so angry
inaccurate these
about
days.
that stuff. Yeah, it's so annoying. But
Yeah,
anyway,
we have if Daniel Weisberg, like bless that guy, but he's never going to agree to come on the podcast. But
you
if we
should
can kind
ask
of
him
figure out a
because
way,
you're a
well, I've asked him,
superstar.
but I've asked him, but he's such a wussy. We have just have no. He's a lovely guy, of course. I'm totally kidding, but he will refuse adamantly to join our podcast because I don't think he likes doing them. But maybe
Oh,
we'll
I
be
thought
able
it was
to.
just us. He doesn't like us.
Well, he doesn't like us either, but maybe we can just coerce him somehow. I know stuff about him, so I can definitely use that to blackmail him
That would be
into
great because
coming.
I have a lot
Yeah,
of. I'm like the Festivus. I have a lot of grievances, and I need to
yeah.
air them out.
Yeah, maybe we could
No,
kind of surprise him by having a lot of
it's horrible
SEOs
questions.
here, just asking him, drilling him with questions.
Do a live episode with everybody from social media to ask him
Yeah.
stuff. No, but seriously, like, yeah, that's something that pisses me off about Search Console. But before we talk to Dana, I want to remind you, all of you guys, that luckily and gratefully, this podcast is sponsored by teamseymour.com. And I have here a special guest from Team
Oh dear.
Seymour, and his name
So
is
when is she
Simo.
coming on?
I mean, I gave up on you bringing Mario. It would be nice if Mario was here to do this.
Yeah.
So we have Simo from Seymour over here today. Woo, woo, woo.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Simo, and I'm from Team Simmer. And as always,
Hi, Simo.
hello, Juliana. Lovely to be here. As always, we have a standing discount for all listeners of this podcast, and pretty much everybody else as well. Whoever asks me, I'm just gonna pass it on, even if they don't listen to the podcast, which is very bad for our record keeping.
Exactly.
But you can use the coupon code DEVIATE, that's DEVIATE, to get 10% off any individual course purchase on the teamsimmer.com website. And please take a look at the technical marketing handbook. So that's handbook.teamsimmer.com, which is just a free resource to get your entire team and all your colleagues and your family to finally understand what you do for a living. So make them read it and share it with their friends and colleagues as well. That's my pitch. That was actually pretty smooth.
That was really good. That
Yeah,
probably one of
totally
the
off the
best you
cuff.
did.
Totally off the
I need to
cuff.
save this.
I got some new revitalized over the summer, so
I need to save this one to reuse it next time.
yeah, just slow it down a bit. I think I
Yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of ran through it.
Awesome. Well, let's have Dana in, and for
Yes.
thankfully we're gonna go to a more less unhinged conversation.
No, more unhinged, less
More
hinged.
unhinged,
It's gonna be less hinged.
less hinged. Let's go.
Yeah. Nice applause, huge applause. Hey Dana, how are you? Good morning.
Good. How are you both?
Yeah, we're surviving, surviving the mess of the intro. So
It wasn't
I
that
just want
bad.
to start with a banger. Like, let me ask you just a very specific question. How do you do SEO with GA4, or vice versa?
That was.
That's a
Take her to
very
dinner first, please.
I know, right? You're just hopping right into it. How
Yeah.
do I do SEO with GA4? So I think, this is so interesting because I mean, my background, like I've been doing this for over 20 years now. I started out making websites, which I'm not very good at all. And then, my first client was like, how do I get on Google? I'm like, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And then I did SEO for a long time and I really liked SEO, but I found that the problem in SEO, and it's still a problem in SEO, is that SEOs just aren't great at looking at analytics. They look at it and they see sessions. So many of the questions that I get, in the various Slacks that I'm a part of, like the SEO Slack or the Women in Tech SEO Slack, a lot of the questions are, I see different numbers in Google Search Console than I see in GA4, and they're off. And why is that? And so it's almost like a basic data literacy thing, which is, Google isn't telling you everything and GA4 isn't telling you everything. So you have two systems that aren't telling you everything matching together to give you really not everything amplified. And I think it's just a matter of really that data literacy. So that's part of what really captured me about analytics is being able to say, like, this isn't accurate and this is why, and this is what we can draw from the inaccurate data. But then also getting a sense of what are the other things we can capture on websites to help us understand how people
Yeah.
who come to the site via organic are engaging with it. Are they actually good visitors? Because I think from an SEO perspective, that's a much better gauge of success. Like, did they scroll literally at all? Did they even see a way to convert? And that's like, Simo, when I found your website, when I first started getting into Google Tag Manager, I was like, okay, there's some cool stuff you can do in GTM. And so that's kind of how I fell into this world of analytics. So it's your fault, actually.
I'm sorry. But actually, you're welcome because I think it's a good place to be in.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. I think that I've been to my fair share of SEO conferences, and I think that at least some of the European ones adopted me as their go-to analytics person, and I really, at least for the first few years, it was kind of surprised, and I'm kind of stereotyping the SEO now, but it was about talking about landing pages and bounce rates, which is really like the key acquisition metrics in a way. It's the throwaway metrics. So people cared about, did we get traffic through SEO? But just like you said, it's not a very interesting benchmark if they don't actually do anything you wanted them to do. Like you could use Search Console for the just the acquisition metrics if you wanted to.
I know. And just bounce rate, like I have such a visceral reaction whenever anybody talks about bounce rate.
I'm sorry I
I
mentioned
hate
it.
so much. I mean, you can
Yeah.
see I have a little dumpster fire here on my shelf that represents bounce rate.
I love it.
Oh,
I
that's
see
cool.
And I
it.
think
Yeah.
bounce rate was just this metric where people, I loved showing clients, look, I'm going to put a new, in UA, I'm going to make a new event fire 1 second after the page loads, and it's going to be an interactive session. And look, your bounce rate is like almost nothing. You can have your bonus
and then
now.
you send the
right?
bill.
Yeah. And people would say to me, like, my bonus depends on a good bounce rate. No problem. We'll get that bonus for you, right? And now with GA4, yes, there's bounce rate. It's the inverse of engagement rate. We all know that. But also engagement rate is turning into the new bounce rate. But engagement rate is slightly better. At least it gives us
It's
something
not
to
that
go
bad.
off of. But I find that engagement rate is a much more effective metric when you're talking to paid advertising people, because there is a really clear, like, clearly this campaign is targeting people accidentally who are like kids who are using their parents' phones and accidentally tapped on a mobile ad and didn't actually mean to, to tap on that. They just wanted the free thing that the ad was going to give them, right? Like, that's where engagement rate really shines. I don't find engagement rate to be as effective an SEO tactic. I think that there's effort that needs to be put in by SEOs to measure other stuff. And I mean, I mentioned already, my favorite thing to measure from an SEO perspective is, was the call to action even viewed? Like, did
Yeah.
it enter the viewport? You know, like, could they see that purchase button
Yeah.
or add to cart or the fill out form, or, you know, if you have like a banner on your site, like, were they actually able to see that?
Yeah.
And some of the things we measure, for example, on the Playbook website, I measure every single image that entered the viewport
Yeah.
at 100%, because that tells me exactly how far down the page they got and where they bailed. And like that level of measurement, SEOs are like, oh, I don't know, it's a lot of noise, but GA4 is so much better. I would never have done this in Universal Analytics. It would have been ridiculous to try to sort through, but in GA4 it makes sense and it works. So why would you not add these extra things? But I think it's this intimidation level of GTM seems too complex and it's too technical. And I don't know. I just play with content and I don't want to learn GTM, but it's like, it's more accessible than it's ever been. And GA4
it's
is really helped with
surprisingly
that.
easy to, like, if you have a well-structured website, it's surprisingly easy to add those hooks there. But that's a good point. Like,
If
that's
you have
such
a
an overlooked
well-structured
thing.
website.
If you have a
That's the other problem.
yeah, for sure. That's like triple underline right there.
Yeah.
But it's such an overlooked thing, this idea of viewport, because people, like, for example, the way to do impressions has always been just dump the impressions in the data layer, like for a product list. Just dump them in the data layer when the page loads and send them. But that tells you nothing. Like, if it's a infinite scroll or something, you're still the user only sees maybe 3 or 4 of those products. So getting a CTR for something the user never actually even interacted with or could see sounds like kind of manipulative from an analytics perspective. So I think that people, maybe people just see, they kind of love building that bubble where analytics is just data. It has nothing to do with the website. It's just data that you're looking at, and you forget the fact that there are real people interacting with the website
and struggling with the website too.
Yeah. But this is why that CRO is where it sits in the middle between data and SEO, because it's where the website is. Like when you do a heuristic evaluation, because now, Simo, you know what a heuristic evaluation is. You do look at the viewports, like what are people seeing? You look at the scroll, you look at the behavior, you look at clicks, which are very important also for searchability and discoverability. So I really like lately I've just been thinking about the world where, you know, like there's the fusion dance between SEO and CRO, like in Dragon Ball Z, you know, like you just come and then you're just like, psh,
speaking of bounce rate, I think it's been redeemed a bit in the sense that, like, bounce back to SERP is a very interesting thing to measure again. Like, how did they immediately go back to the
Can you
Google
measure
search?
that?
Like, what?
Can you measure that?
You can. I've got an article about it. But it's tricky, but because you basically need to assume that they came from Google search first, so check the referrer, and then if they then like hit the back button, then you can get that information. But that could be very interesting. But it, of course, then it needs to scale. You can't just look at an individual visitor doing. You need to look at the entire of all your landing pages and all of that information. But
yeah, and you could do that for sure. And it's something where actually we still, if you remember back in classic analytics, there was the UTM Z. I'm going to say because I'm Canadian, UTM Z of cookie. And so we still have code to recreate those on websites that we do, and we still save them along with form fills and everything else. So that is part of what we save. And like, yeah, this person came from organics. It's a Google property and there's no G-click. So therefore, you know, there's no UTM. So this is our inference. And then we have that thing that you talked about where we're measuring if people are hitting back or not. And yeah, then we know it's, and I think that this also relates to those leaks that Mike King and Rand Fishkin talked about, you know, where it's so funny because for years, you know, Rand, Mike, and other people in the SEO industry, including myself, were like, yeah, this is actually, you know, probably something that Google's measuring because Chrome. And everyone's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're actually measuring it. And yeah, they are. It's, yeah, well, are they still? I don't know. They're out there in the world, maybe not, but it is something to consider as well, not just from it's going to improve my Google rankings perspective, but from a just general, like, don't piss people off when they come to your website perspective. You want them to engage with you. You want them to like your brand. And maybe they're not going to convert on that first visit or that 50th, but as they get to know you over time, then they will think of you first. And if you come up in that moment when they're ready to go, you're going to get that sale.
yeah, and if you see like a set of certain landing pages always having that very low dwell time, then you can correlate that with what they look like in the SERP. Are they showing up for the wrong keywords or queries, and then of course the kind of SGE and AI fueled search are muddying the waters even more because we are so much further away from being able to actually reproduce these results. But
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And Google Discover too is something to think about too that I don't think a lot of SEOs necessarily spend a lot of time on. And actually, my particular theory about why people don't think about Google Discover is I'm an Android user, but I would say like most of the SEOs I talk to are actually iPhone people, and Discover isn't something that comes up on iPhone a lot. You have to open the Google app and actually go into it in order to use it. But in Android, every time I open a Chrome tab, there it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that's much more embedded with my life, and having a client show up and Discover, we've had this happen a few times, has been not just like a ridiculous amount of traffic, just generally, maybe not the most relevant traffic, but certainly a ton of traffic. But then long term, being able to get them into something like a remarketing strategy.
How
So
do
this
you
is again where like
identify the
SEO and PPC come
Discover?
together, right?
How do you identify them in the traffic reports, the ones that come from
So
Discover?
the only way you can really tell is if they come from Android, because there's a com.android.something something, I have it written down, that shows up as part of the string in terms of how they get to the site. And then you can grab that and tag manager and save it along with the thing. I'm actually working on a way right now, which I don't have it fully baked, to be able to actually show that in GA4, like basically change the URL to add on a UTM that it comes from Google Discover if that's detected. I don't have it totally working yet, but that's kind of my theory on like what
That's
the best way
cool.
would be to make it work. But you can go in and look and see that it did come from that string, and it does show up.
Could you see it in Search Console or Ahrefs or
You do
SEMrush?
see it
Or
in Search Console. Yeah. There's a
I
whole
ping
Discover
you
section
after
in
this
Search Console.
podcast. I might ping you because this is interesting for me. But you said something. Okay, so Simo, I'm starting to be selfish again because I'm really like this is the first
Go
time I'm
ahead.
actually interested in SEO in 14 years of career. So
Wow, what a compliment.
I love it. No, but like I'm actually excited about it. So
Yeah.
you said in the beginning that there's a
hmm
difference between Search Console data and GA4 data. Why is that a difference? Because obviously, Google has their own algorithms to calculate shit, but why?
hmm So they have said it's because of privacy. Whether or not that's
Oh,
true or not, I mean, privacy, I'm going to put quote marks around that. But it's the same thing with Google Ads too. They don't want to show very specific keywords
mm,
that could identify who the individual is. So this is particularly bad in local SEO, which I spend a lot of my time working on. It's where I originally focused my specialty in SEO. And in local SEO, you get all kinds of weird searches. People are looking for like, I want parts for this whirlpool with this model number located near me. Here's my zip code, right? And so that search is never going to show up in Google Search Console because it's far too long and far too specific. But it is a legitimate search, and somebody probably clicked on the site. And if you had the thing, they probably bought it. So it's a real, actual, really good search that's going to show up as an organic result, but it's not going to have a corresponding Google Search Console session or impression or click attached to it. So I think that's where just to be aware of, those longer tail phrases. And also there's a limit to what you're going to get in terms of what shows on the screen because it only pulls 1,000 keywords total, right? So that's the other half of it. If you have a huge website, there's a limit to what you're going to see if you're in Google Search Console. So really looking at Google Search Console data in Google Search Console is probably one of the worst ways to actually engage with that data. There's a great tool that we use called Branch Tools that does a pull of Google Search Console into BigQuery. And they have a nice set of Looker Studio templates and everything for it. But one of the things that
branched.
they do is they pull Looker Studio data on a subfolder by subfolder basis and then rebuild it so that way you get more than just that base number of keywords that they allow you to see on a site-wide basis.
Okay, I didn't even know about that tool.
Yeah, it's a
It's
really fantastic tool. They need to talk about it more. They're great.
I just
Was it?
opened it to make sure we add it to the episode notes.
Isn't there like an official Search Console export to BigQuery as
Yep,
well?
there is. I find that you get more data with branch tools. So
Okay.
that's why we use it. And they also do some processing on it too. So one of the things I find most effective is they have top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom of funnel phrases.
Oh, nice.
And then they look for ones that are, close to winning. So something that's in like the average 5 to 10 position that could be bumped up to 1 to 5 with a little bit more work. So there's a little bit of SEO help that Branch does in addition to the actual exporting itself.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
So I have just one more GA4 related question, and then we can kind of clear the air and talk about something more fun. But
Great.
because I've always entertained, and people have entertained these kind of, and you kind of mentioned it with you mentioned Chrome and Chrome metrics. It's always been interesting because Google owns Google Analytics and they own the search and they own the Chrome browser. Why don't we have more information in GA4 about search traffic? Like, we have not provided for the keywords, and there was again, the privacy
Mhm.
veneer is what they claim to be there.
Mhm.
But there's so much more information that could be gleaned from search, and it could be aggregated, or it could
Mhm.
kind of de-anonymize completely now that they do so much modeling anyway. Is there something that, if you're not allowed to say the search query, is there something you are missing particularly that you would love to see
Oh,
alongside the
I
behavioral
would
data that GA4
love
got?
to get search queries back again. Honestly, I really would. I
Yeah,
mean, it's never going to happen. I just think about it sometimes.
but it's
Just
incredible to think about how different our industry was back then when we had them, like
oh
how
yeah,
easy it was
we didn't know how
compared to
good we
how
had it.
difficult it is now. Yeah, exactly.
And they took it away from us. Yeah. I would
Yeah,
love to have that back again. And I just want to say too, for people who are listening, if you see a tool set that's like, we'll restore this, they don't
yeah,
actually, they're just making educated guesses,
yeah,
and you too can make these educated guesses yourself by using
yeah.
blending of different data sources. So don't buy the tool. It's not necessary. I would say that, yeah, that'd be great to have keywords back. But I think the number one thing that I would love to know, and these are all privacy things, right? It's like the amount of tracking that I would want to know is be able to track this individual person all the way through and have a better integration with, say, a client CRM or something like that. Because one of the things that I really miss in Universal Analytics is the old measurement protocol. The new
Hmm.
measurement protocol in GA4 is kind of poop. And
Hmm.
it's extremely difficult to push stuff over and have it tie together across,
Yeah.
client IDs or user IDs, right? Like, for example, for the courses that we sell on Kickpoint Playbook, I'm pushing, when people complete a lesson, I'm pushing that into GA4. I'm just using Zapier for it.
Mm.
And we have a user ID, so it should tie up. It sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't. It's like, that's great. That's
Yeah.
not helpful at all. Thanks so much, right? And so that sort of thing was so easy in Universal Analytics, and it's extremely difficult. It's harder than it should be in GA4. And things like CallRail, for example, the tool that we always recommend for call tracking,
Yeah.
the way in which they couldn't push in attribution data for a long time via the measurement protocol, right? So everything showed up as a direct, and you had to register these custom dimensions of source, medium,
It's
campaign
crazy.
that were pushed in from CallRail. And then I made a case statement in Looker Studio to mash together the actual, what GA4 was telling me for the source medium, and then what CallRail was telling me for the source medium, to make one actual attribution report. Like, I shouldn't have had to do that. That
Every
is
time
not a
you
good
go
use
to
of my
case
time.
when in Looker, you already doing too much. That's my that's my
Hmm.
kind of like my law when you start
I think
to
there's
write.
a lot of GA4 feature stories that end with the words, "I shouldn't have to do that much work."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, part of it is too probably because the GA4 had to have an earlier sunset than I think Google was predicting, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, overarchingly, the issue with GA4 generally is it's a great data collection tool. It's not a great data reporting tool in terms of the
Yeah.
interface. Explorations have so much potential, but they're still only half baked.
Mm.
And let's be honest, like, the GA4 team is under the Google Ads team. Search is
Yeah.
not their priority. Paid is their priority. And I think that ultimately, once paid is maybe more settled in the GA4 ecosystem, they might be able to turn their sites to helping out support SEOs. But like, a lot of what they do, I'm sure that their sprint priorities are focused entirely on making advertisers happy, so they keep spending money. This whole thing with like conversions and key events, for example, I think was a great
Yeah.
illustration of that. Hmm.
Another one, the swear word jar. So
Hmm.
regarding that, search and Google Analytics teams are so kind of divorced, but Search Console has been improving its like data and reporting capabilities quite a bit, especially
Hmm.
since Daniel Weisberg joined with such a
Yes.
long analytics background. Do you think that's going to be kind of the future of site analytics as well at some point? That Search Console itself will have that information?
It shouldn't have to. I mean,
Yeah,
it might, but it shouldn't have to. We already have an analytics product. Why do we need another analytics product? This is just like classic Google. It's like, let's
yeah,
not fix up an old product. Let's make something new, and then we're going to abandon it in 6 years, right? And so that's what I worry about with. I even worried about this too when I saw explorations coming to GA4. Like, if explorations are going to be this good, which they're not, but they talked about them getting to this point. Are we going to need Looker Studio for GA4? Are we just going to do all this analysis in GA4? And it's like they need to have an overarching analytics strategy of some kind on how they're going to bring these tools together. Because I think that they are very much in their own little silos. And there's the Looker Studio team, which doesn't talk to the GA4 team
mm.
because of that whole thing with like the quota. For example, the quota credits being pulled in Looker Studio. That should never have happened.
No, I
And
think
then
that
there's the Google
blindsided the
search.
analytics team as well.
Right? And then there's the GSC team who's just like, hey, we're over here talking SEOs, which, nobody likes
Yeah.
SEOs. So I think that there's these three, and there's more than that. There's just Looker and Looker Studio. We could have a whole separate episode about the ridiculous of that name change. Google Data Studio was a perfectly fine name. They did not need to change it. And there's all these different data teams who I don't think are really talking to each other. And I think that that's one of the major issues with getting data out of Google. Oh, and there's analytics inside Google Ads too, by the way. So there's then that as well. And even, for example, the connector for Looker Studio for Google Ads doesn't have everything. You have to use a third-party tool like Supermetrics if you're going to get some basic extra stuff out of Google Ads. Like, for example, the other day I needed to pull postcodes out of reporting. The only way you can get that is Supermetrics, even though it's available in the reports in Google Ads. The default Google Ads connector for Looker Studio does not have those dimensions. Why? I don't know. It's just how it is.
Well, I mean, one overarching data strategy that they can have, which they've been doing now across their teams, is to enable the BigQuery export.
Yeah.
And shift the responsibility to the.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But last time I checked, like, most people don't have a data analyst just stashed under their desk that they can be like, hey, can you run some SQL for me? Sure, things like ChatGPT are great at helping you write SQL, but like the whole BigQuery is such a major step, especially if you're doing analytics off the side of your desk. Like, a lot of the people I talk to are agency folks. There's no, especially at smaller mid-sized agencies, there's no dedicated analytics team. People are doing it for their clients off the side of their desk when they have time. And if I say to them, hey, you need to learn BigQuery now, like, no, they're just going to cry and then quit. Like, that's, and I think that's where BigQuery sounds great in theory, but it's not necessarily applicable for a lot of people. Like small businesses, for example, they're not going to learn BigQuery. No, absolutely not. They just want to report. And so we shouldn't have to go through all these steps to get a decent report on how things are going.
No, but I think Google uses it as a convenient
totally
get out of jail free card, that they don't have to work on those integrations because they can just dump the integrations to the, which of course creates a big industry around BigQuery in terms of training and data form reports or data form recipes and stuff like that. So yeah.
And I love the idea of being able to put this stuff in BigQuery. And I think that that's one great advantage of tools like GA4, which has really, I think, spurred other tools to put things into BigQuery. But the reality is that most normal human beings are not going to use BigQuery to get data and create reports. It's a step too far. And I think that that's something
that's a fair point.
Again, just shows that like GA4 is built for analysts, not necessarily for normal humans, of which I don't count myself as anymore. I spend way too much time in GA4 now.
And it's not just BigQuery, it's SQL too. Like, it's a programming language that you need to learn. And it's like,
who knew that my experience in the late 90s using Microsoft Access was going to pay off and having
Microsoft
to relearn SQL.
Oh my God, yeah, I remember Microsoft.
My very first real job out of university was working for a environmental software company that helped companies with their EPA reporting in the States, and it was built in Microsoft Access. And then I went to a company that made Lotus Notes software, so I was really just on the cutting edge of software technology.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
You mentioned, you mentioned
you
mentioned Kickpoint playbook. Let's talk a bit about that also, because like I don't want to, don't want to avoid that. So tell us about your online training programs. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so Kickpoint playbook came out of, I was at the very beginning of the pandemic, like maybe a couple months in. I got a great email from LinkedIn Learning who said, we've seen your stuff and we would like you to do some training courses for us. And so I did technical SEO. I did a course on moving from Universal Analytics to GA4, which some people still take for some reason. I don't know why. Like that ship sailed, but thanks for taking
Nostalgia.
the course. And then Advanced GA4, which actually just got republished in August. So if you watched it before, watch it again because it's all new and updated. And that experience really taught me a lot about structuring courses because they're a great team to work with. And out of that, it's like I do a lot of training. Maybe it's time that we start selling our own courses. And part of it too was that one of the things that we see as an agency when we hire people, especially right out of school, is, schools taught them some things, but they don't really know the day-to-day ins and outs of how digital marketing works. And so analytics is where we started because, that's my specialty at the agency. That's what we do. But we are publishing courses in other non-analytics topics as well. We'll be coming out with those. But the big thing with Playbook is really trying to empower people to feel comfortable with the products. So a lot of the people in particular who take our GA4 course, which is practical GA4, it's just, I really want to approach it as like we're all stuck in this together and we're going to learn how it is. And the point of this is not for me to teach you, click save to save. Like that's not, sure, there's there, but also specific use cases. You need to track how many people clicked on this button and you don't have Google Tag Manager. How do you do that? You need to report on whether or not these ads campaigns are actually turning into business. How do you do that?
Mm.
And I think that's what we really try to focus on in our training is specific task-based training for people. And then the other course we have is analytics for agencies, which is analytics for agencies. And I talk people through how we do analytics at my agency Kickpoint from start to finish, from a discovery all the way through to implementation, have templates and our own default Google Tag Manager container, our own default Looker Studio report we use for all of our clients, our own plans and everything else. So it is really analytics in a box for an agency. And then the other thing that we started to do recently this year is offer parity pricing. So one of the things is, again, like our mission is accessibility of this knowledge. So being able to say, if you live in, say, India, the Indian rupee is not necessarily great against the US dollar. Living in Canada, I think the dollar today is like, $1.35 to the US dollar. It's not great. And so that might not be accessible to you, depending upon, maybe it is, and that's great. And if you feel comfortable paying full price, you can. But if that's something where you can't take this course because you can't afford it because of the exchange rate, we have a form you can fill out on our website, and then we send you a discount code. In this case, for India, it would be 75% off the course. And that way it's accessible to everybody. That's a really important part of what we do too, is just making sure that people,
that's so cool.
Around the world have an opportunity to take the courses, not just people who happen to live in like North America and Europe.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Really cool. Sounds also like an accountant's nightmare, at least like a financial reporting nightmare, because you have the price fluctuates so much. But
yeah, I mean, our bookkeeper is great. Our bookkeeper is named Ashley. And my wife's name's also named Ashley. So sometimes I accidentally send things to our bookkeeper. I meant to send to my wife. Nothing too embarrassing though. And Ashley puts up with our hijinks quite a bit, but she's great. And it's because everything is just billed in one currency still, it is still US dollars. It does make it easy for reporting. It's just a matter of when we pull the financials, it's just like, it was at this price or this price, and this was the average, and that's how we do it.
Do people abuse that system? Do you know if there's any?
I mean, there might be, every once in a while I go in and look and see, and there's some people who have an account, but they're logging in from multiple places. There might just be one or two cases, but I find a lot of the times people aren't really abusing it. I mean, yet. Certainly if we find that people are like sharing accounts across like 50 people, we're going to shut that down. But I find that it's, and it's something where people appreciate it. So they're not necessarily going to abuse it, because not a lot of courses necessarily offer this. And I think that, it's the idea of making it accessible and making it so that, and I don't restrict it either. We have office hours for analytics for agencies. And I don't say, we can't go to office hours if you paid via parity pricing, because you also get access to these tools as well in our community and everything else. There's no limit there.
It's nerve-wracking because it's just me and my wife running the finances, so it's kind of nerve-wracking to feel like how much is going to be abused. Partly because there's so much piracy going on around courses. Like we find our courses in the weirdest places all the time, and some people have the gall to say like, "Hey, I found your course at $80 in this place. Can you meet that price?" And I'm like,
"Yeah.
Just go there. It's fine."
That means you made it, right? If people are pirating your courses, look how popular you are. I talked to Marie Poulin, who runs Notion Mastery, which is if people want to learn Notion, Marie's course is fantastic. And she's actually kind of a neighbor to me. She lives on the Sunshine Coast of BC. I'm just over on Vancouver Island. And we were talking about parity pricing, and she said, this is money you would get. Like people wouldn't buy this course otherwise. You would have 0 sales, or you would have 1 sale that's reduced price. You do need to keep an eye on abuse. And she also, like her and her husband who run Notion Mastery, and they have a small team, they definitely see abuse from people who fill out the form and like try to get away with selling it to their friends. But you just gotta know that some people are going to abuse it, but some people could abuse it and pay full price too. So just because it's cheaper doesn't necessarily mean for sure it'll be abused.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting point. And I feel like, I don't think like financially it would probably not make such a big difference, but it would definitely be a very kind of generous thing to do and an altruistic thing, and kind of help out the community with that, because it is the pricing of these courses is definitely putting a lot of people out of that scope, out of that reach.
I have to say, like, Canadian dollar versus the euro is not great. I definitely, when I bought server-side tagging, I was like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna get this, even
I
though
bet.
it's expensive.
You should have
Well, you
used
can
the
always just ping
discount
me and I'll give
code.
you a generous discount.
Oh, I did have a discount code. It didn't matter. It's still a euro,
good.
still
You
ridiculous.
could have.
Yeah.
We have the discount code for 10% off DVA. That's DVIAT.
Well done.
Hold that.
Good.
Yeah, and I'll work in one too. So I'm gonna give a 20% off discount code. Oh, against
Oh,
any
man.
Kickpoint Playbook course. Use the code. What's yours is Deviate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Deviate. Yes, I will do the same. Deviate, but 20%
Oh, that's
off.
nice.
Match that.
That's nice.
This is turning into like a charity run. I'm gonna start
love-
taking calls next. Like,
like a
yeah,
those-
telethon.
telethon, yeah.
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 So I want to ask you something about your agency. Something really
Mhm.
interesting. We have a lot of juniors listening to the podcast as well.
Yes.
So I would like to know from you, like, what are the top things you're looking to when you're hiring people, like new people?
Mhm.
A lot of people come from when I moved to analytics, because you probably both, I mean, you know for sure, Simo, I don't know if you know, but I come from digital marketing. So I kind of like pivoted to data out of nowhere 2
Mhm.
years ago. And I was struggling to get a job because I wasn't Simo when it comes to GTM. That was the bar that I had to, achieve. I still don't. But people don't really care how much you understand business context or how data plays into the story. It's kind of everything very task driven. Like, can you do a floodlight tag? Can you do a
Mhm.
pixel implementation? So a lot of people that are just getting started into an industry kind of skip understanding how a business works because they think employers don't care. But I really refuse to think that that's the case everywhere. So I wanted to know from you, like, what is this type of stuff you're looking to when you're hiring newcomers? Like, what should people do to be attractive to employers?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is make sure to pay attention to the instructions given on how to apply. When we've been hiring in the past, we'll say, like, don't send a resume, send this. And then people don't follow those instructions. So, number one, follow the instructions. Number two, we know when you've written it using ChatGPT. Please don't. It's just like there's ChatGPT speak and it's pretty obvious. Like, I don't necessarily care about using ChatGPT for the structure of it, but don't get it to write the thing wholesale. Just use it for helpful outlines. And then the other thing is what we're looking for is someone who has a willingness to admit when they don't know something. Because especially if you're new in the field, you know very little. And like I'm 24 years in, I'm still learning lots every single day. And sometimes it's like, well, seen that before, but not everything is going to be seen that before. There's new stuff that comes out all the time. Like I had to open up Google Ads the other day. The interface is completely changed. It's great. Now I have to relearn where everything is. Love it. And this is part of the joy and pain of working in digital marketing is that it changes all the time. We don't always have a massive change like GA4, for example. Sometimes it's small incremental stuff like this little thing has come out but then you do have big changes like AI overviews and being able to adapt, but then also admit when you don't know something is important. And then also being comfortable with really, lifelong learning. Because if you want to just do the same thing all the time, then this is not the field to go into. And that's fine. There's lots of other interesting jobs you can do in this industry that don't necessarily rely on your life changing all the time. Like the way in which I do SEO now versus the way I did SEO back in 2000, very different. It's like it was before Google Ads existed. It was before Google Maps existed, right? And people are still using MapQuest to find stuff. And I think that's where it's, and 24 years from now, who knows what kind of thing is going to exist for SEO. Maybe we won't have any more tracking at all anymore. And then I'll have to pivot into something else. Maybe analytics will just be like some sort of long distant memory because finally,
It's just going to be post-apocalyptic survival 24 years from
it'll
now.
just
So
be
we're
like
just going to
it'll
be
just be
fighting
like
each
when
other
we
for
had
food.
billboards
Exactly.
and we're like, this number of cars drove past. I guess this is how much money this billboard made, right? Like maybe we'll be back in those dark ages again.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Those
certainly
LiDAR.
this is the constant in our field is change, and so I think that's important to get comfortable with. And then the other thing is pick the experts who you're going to pay attention to. Don't listen to what everybody has to say because a lot of people don't know what they're talking about. And they're just doing it because they want to sell, their course or whatever it might be. And I say that, ironically, I sell courses too. But there's a lot of people out there who will sell you courses designed to make millions doing this thing. Like if they were making millions, they would not be selling the course.
Yeah.
Like Nowhere in my GA4 course do I tell you you're going to make millions doing GA4. You're just going to be able to like keep your job and have happy clients. Like that's really the goal we're working on here.
Millions
So
of frustrations you'll be able to make.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, great. Here's the ways you can get some new ulcers. And I think this is where just pick your experts and pay attention to those people and don't spend so much time on Twitter. I think those are just like good life rules generally for this industry.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, thank you. Like, I'm so excited that you came over, and I would have loved to talk more about SEO and Search Console. But I'm probably gonna ping you after
Anytime.
this.
I am happy to come on back and chat about this stuff
For
whenever.
sure.
Yeah, because I feel like I need to learn some stuff more because I'm excited about SEO. As
We
I
didn't
said.
talk about apps at all, like the SEO.
I want to
word for
talk
apps.
about apps. Yeah, like GA4. Okay,
You always want to.
I want to talk about apps. So
Yeah, that's
4
good.
minutes away. GA4
Mhm.
for apps. Your main thoughts about apps and SEO for
I
apps
would
and also
say
GA4
that
for apps.
in my training, I rarely run into people who have apps and are using GA4 for apps, which is like it's so rare. And it's so funny because the whole thing with GA4 was like everybody can put their app data in. Well, you know what? Not everybody has an app.
Yeah.
It might also be like the kind of people who I work with who are typically like small to mid-sized businesses.
Yeah.
Certainly we work with some larger businesses, like we worked with Expedia for years. But
Nice.
even then, like if they're doing app measurement, it's at a completely different level than slapping that puppy into GA4. Right. So I think that's where, I don't know, I feel like the app side of GA4 is kind of like, that's nice, but it doesn't, it's like how every tool has AI in it now. Like I don't need to have AI in my like coffee machine. It's that's nice to have. It's not the thing. And I think that's what GA4 and apps is like. Yeah, there's some great features with regards to being able to put your web streams and your app streams all together. But ultimately, like, is that the main use of GA4? No, we all know that it's web streams. And so I think that's where it's not something I've run into all that often, honestly. And I'm not surprised.
Crazy. So I'm either like in the wrong field or I'm hustling backwards and I'm not capitalizing on this.
You're so just much beyond the time. You're ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
like you're talking about analytics for apps, and
like
people have been kind of neglecting.
Like 10 years from now, people will be like, "Oh, I get it."
Yeah, exactly. And then they'll be like, "I just figured it out," and you figured it out 10 years ago.
That's
You'll
why
be
I
like,
stopped
"No, I figured it out
writing.
10 years ago."
That's why I stopped writing on my blog about apps because like people don't give a shit. So why how my articles are big. Like I actually spent a week on an article because I like it to be long and
okay. We can have a
comprehensive.
completely different therapy session about that, but you don't have to worry about people reading it. Like if you're writing long form content, it's good stuff.
I know. It's just that I got a bit.
You got to pick it up.
I got a bit, like.
And because if people don't read it, it's on them. It's not on you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
But if you
anyway.
would like to know if people are reading your content, actually, I have a great Google Tag Manager recipe for that. It's called content consumption. And you can install it through Tag Manager or through WordPress, and it counts how many words are in the div or whatever that contains your content, and then whether or not you got to the bottom of the content. And so if the div is like 8 minutes of reading and they saw to the bottom in the same page view, then we count the content as being consumed. And it's really great. It's free. It's on our website.
Does it work with Amplitude/Pivot Pro?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can deploy it through Tag Manager, so it really works.
Please send that. Please send me the link for that, or like help me find this. So I'll put it in the episode notes, and also I will peruse it.
In the last 2 minutes of the interview, we managed to change Juliana's life.
Yeah, because I love it. Okay, I'm done. I will probably stop here.
We'll have to wrap things up now. That was a beautiful way to finish. A lovely gift to Juliana from Dana. And so, Dana, where can people find you and follow you online? You disparage Twitter, so I'm assuming that's not one of those.
I'm on there sometimes, not as much anymore. Every time I go on Twitter, I just get mad, so I just close it.
Yeah.
It's just full of crap. So LinkedIn is really where I spend most of my time for sure. I definitely prefer. I mean, there's obviously some, there's a great subreddit called LinkedIn Lunatics.
I love it.
That's got.
I'm not in it. Thank God.
LinkedIn is really where I spend most of my time for sure. And we have a YouTube channel for Kickpoint Playbook. So definitely subscribe to that. And we have a newsletter called the Playbook Huddle. Get it? Huddle Playbook. Haha. Anyway, that comes out every 2 weeks and has some exclusive tips from the courses, as well as I'm going to be writing something about cookieless and in this upcoming newsletter. And then, that comes out every other Tuesday. So you can sign up on our website, which is kpplaybook.com/newsletter.
Awesome.
And that's all coming in the show notes. That's really good. Good
Diligently.
stuff. Yes. Succinctly.
Succinctly.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming, Dana. And
thank you for the lovely talk.
Yes, it was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for tuning in with us today. We'll see you next time.